Hey, gun people. Man, I can't believe that this isn't like in every news media out here. Liberal left wing Houston, run by the left, taking over stinking Texas, ruining a whole damn state. Houston, Dallas, Austin, all the left wing cities bringing their crap in. So this chief, quota hire, I don't think he's from the streets or was hired, but anyway, we're number one. Yeah, okay. FBI has to come in and investigate. Luckily, the FBI is getting involved. Somebody needs to go to prison on this. This is a huge deal. I have the two search warrants. I'm going to go over the search warrants. I'm going to go over a few of the news articles here. And then if you want to hang around, I'll go over the search warrants where I think the guy's got some real problems and issues. His first warrant was pretty good on face. I'll go over that. And then the second warrant where the PD did a warrant on the officer's cell phone and his car is very telling. But there's still a lot they're not telling us. So luckily the FBI has started their investigation. This is where the two people got killed. Remember when the little Houston boy got on there and was, "We know your number. We know who you are. We're out here trying to protect you and you're killing cops." You know, where 4 or 5 cops got shot serving a drug search warrant. Yeah, well, so it looks like the guy who wrote the warrant, Goines, lied about his confidential informant. Now, we're saying that he lied about the informant. I think his defense is going to be it was a mistaken address. But I'll go over the warrant in that. There was some interesting things here. So the Harris District Attorney of Harris County, Houston's in Harris County, I'm assuming, needs to review all of his 14 spanning criminal cases. So he's had a long career with the Houston PD. I thought I saw over 30 years. I'm seeing here 27. He's got 1,400 criminal cases. They have to review all those because once you get, as a cop, get caught lying, all your cases and credibility go out the door. So every crook and every criminal can come back and go, "Hey, that guy set me up. He lied and I told you and you didn't do it." So that means they have to go reinvestigate all these criminal cases. So when they say they need to review them, they need to go back and say, "Can we make this case without this officer Goines, without his testimony and without him?" If we can't, the case is going to be dismissed. There'll be a lot of people getting out of prison. Doesn't mean they're not guilty. Doesn't mean they didn't do it. Just means because this guy got caught, if the lawyers appeal, they're going to get out. So here they're saying he's been a police officer for 35 years. Man of integrity. Okay. They're saying that during a SWAT operation, there was no cameras. So now the chief is saying, we're moving quickly to ensure that the SWAT officers executing search warrants will be wearing cameras. They ought to have already been wearing cameras. There's no reason for them. They're going in on a high-risk warrant where deadly force is likely and much more probable, and they don't have cameras on them. Meanwhile, they probably got parking attendants wearing cameras. I can't believe this, PD. Oh, I guess I can. It's run by the liberal left. So the drug operation in question took place in January. They executed a search warrant, and the people inside began to shoot the officers, or began to shoot and the officers fired back. Yeah, they began to shoot because they weren't freaking criminals, and the cops did a no-knock warrant. Now, I'll talk about no-knock warrants and how he justifies it in his search warrant, which makes this case so criminal and outrageous, is the two people that live in a home who never sold dope to an informant. They should have had a warrant for the house. The confidential informant said he never bought drugs from them. They were in their house minding their own business. Cops came in, killed their dog. He fired back. They killed him. She fired back to protect him, and they killed her. People are dead. 4 officers are shot because this guy did something really bad in these search warrants, and we don't know what it is yet. So the chief is getting out in front of this saying like, "Oh, I'm such a responsible chief. I signed off on these warrants. I let these narcotics guys go out there. This has been standard operating procedure, and we've got away with it. But now, because I'm in a spotlight, now the chief is saying we're going to end this practice of forcibly entering homes to search without warnings," meaning he's doing away with no-knock warrants. Okay, we'll see. We don't want to wait until more deaths. Well, you had to wait till these 2 died before you looked at it. So in another article here, they're saying that when they went in, Houston police said officer Goines led a no-knock search warrant at the house. Goines was one of 5 officers wounded, and the undercover operation was expected to net large amounts of heroin. This is key. They're expecting heroin, and they find marijuana and cocaine. So, yeah, the people had drugs in the house. That doesn't matter. The government had no probable cause to enter their house, shoot their dog, and kill them, regardless of the fact that they had drugs in their house afterwards. They're saying it's shaken the trust of the community. Shaken the trust between HPD and the community. Really? You think it's shaken? It ought to be freaking absolute 100%. You guys are lying until we prove different. Someone got some of the internal investigation. They said, according to the internal investigations, Goines may have lied about the confidential informant when preparing the warrant. May have lied? They talked to both his confidential informants, and both of them said they've never been in the house. They didn't know these places. They never bought drugs there. So, if the confidential informants were good enough to go buy dope and testify for the government, let's see how quick the government says they're not reliable witnesses when they're saying something against an officer. We'll see how that plays off. Here's a memo of the police. Effective immediately. No knock search warrants restrictions. Effective immediately. Prior to seeking judicial approval of no knock warrant, the chief of police must review and approve the request. So a few minutes ago, he said he was going to go away with it. Then he releases a memo inside his officer saying, well, if I review it, then I may let you do it. Wonder what that means. That means the chief gets to see any high-risk warrants that might interfere with some of his cronies. That's what that means. So they're saying they're reviewing the 1,400 cases. Evidently, there's only, what did they say here? 27 cases are active. The other ones aren't. So over 36 years, 1,400 cases, they're going to go through quickly and review them and say, how many involved dope? How many involved where he found evidence? How many involved where he used a confidential informant? And if the case didn't involve any of those, they're probably going to scream by it. This is not rocket science on how they're going to review these cases. But, you know what? Liberals never miss an opportunity to let a good crisis go to waste. Here's a little news clip on where they're talking about the officers' records.
Proud at a tense town hall meeting, we're learning brand new details about the case officer at the center of the investigation.
We've obtained his personnel file, 288 pages long.
Okay,
which reveals
so
his
a lot of reports, a lot of good things about him they're going to say.
Views and suspensions.
ABC 13 reporter Jessica Willey has been following this investigation since the beginning and joins us live with the very latest tonight. Jessica?
Yeah, and tonight I can tell you the status of Gerald Goines with the Houston Police Department has changed. He is still in the hospital and has been relieved of duty. His attorney confirms it happened over the weekend. Goines has been praised over and over for his use of confidential informants. Of course, now he is accused of lying about using one.
In all of Gerald Goines' reviews as a narcotics officer, his performance was rated highly. Outstanding was checked most often on the 50 reviews he's had since 1993. His productivity, work performance, good judgment, and safety practices listed as his strengths. And for 4 years straight, his supervisor wrote, Goines utilizes confidential informants to positive ends.
Goes once while he shot.
In the botched drug raid last month that killed 2 civilians and injured 5 officers, investigators believe there was never a confidential informant who bought drugs at the Harding house, as Goines swore in a search warrant. Eyewitness News obtained the veteran officer's 288-page City of Houston personnel file. In it, there are more than 30 commendations for professionalism and good work over his
34 years, a lot of great things.
There are also 6 sustained complaints.
6 complaints in that many years doesn't sound like a lot. Most agencies purge complaints after 5 years. They remove them. So because there's only 6 now, that doesn't mean that there have been some purged. the media or nobody's really asking that. That's the question that needs to be asked. How many were purged? What were they? When were they purged, etc.? Nobody's asking that question. That should be asked.
Including one for which he didn't tag crack cocaine as evidence until a month later, and
that's a
only
pretty
when he
serious
was
reprimand.
asked about it.
You've got crack cocaine in your car for a month. You don't book it in, and then when you're asked about it, then you book it in. And he only got a written reprimand. He got off pretty easy. Basically, he drove around with evidence in his car insecure. That evidence was no good. When he did book it in, it wasn't worth a crap because it's been in his car for 30 days. The defense is going to file a dismissal on that case saying the evidence was tainted. There was no chain of custody. It wasn't locked in an evidence locker. There was no transfer of custody. It was left in his car, could have been added to, could have been taken away to, could have been cut, being used. That case is gone if the defense attorney finds out it was his case and that was his dope.
For the sixth, he got a one-day suspension for attacking a man his sister said sexually assaulted her. The police chief at the time wrote,
He attacked a guy who supposedly sexually assaulted his sister. I'm okay with that personally. Rick, you just like cops. I'm just telling you, I'm okay with that. You know what? He's upset. Dude sexually assaulted her. He went after him, kind of hit him. I'm okay with that.
What's missing in the pages is any mention of past shootings or prior problematic drug raids, some of which have been subjects of lawsuits. The absence means Goines was cleared, complaints not sustained. His last review last August called him a mentor to new narcotics investigators, while also saying he needed to increase his productivity levels.
Somebody's putting pressure on him. That's what we call quotas. That's when the administration says, look, we need to justify this drug task force. We need to justify more officers. We are not producing enough to justify to hire more officers. You guys need to increase your productivity. When agencies tell cops that, shit like this happens because they want their quotas. And then cops are like, crap, I'm going to have to go back to the road. Crap, I'm going to have to do this. They're getting pressure from the administration to produce. And then they end up doing stupid crap like this to get results. This is when the lawsuits start coming down. HPD is going to try to distance themselves from this lawsuit and say, this was Officer Goines acting on his own. It wasn't me. We didn't know about it. When we found out about it, we corrected it. We gave him letter reprimands. We didn't know any of this was going on. Well, yeah, you did know because you told your officers they better produce more. You encouraged them to go out there and produce more. And how are they supposed to do that if they don't find dope? Well, one way is to plant dope. One way is to make up false information on a warrant so you can serve a search warrant. That way you can justify how many warrants you did. Who cares if you don't find dope? You're still justifying things because you were told you better increase productivity. This is a big key in a civil suit.
His attorney hopes he gets a fair shake.
He's heartbroken by the way this situation has played out publicly. What he has hoped for and what we have hoped for is a neutral and independent, thorough investigation.
Okay, she's his attorney. Of course, she's going to say he didn't do anything wrong. But what she's not saying is why are they saying he lied in a warrant? Why isn't she saying the warrant he wrote was correct and factual? He did nothing wrong. You're going to find out that she can make statements and it won't be against his penal interest because this is his attorney. And she didn't do that. To me, that's a clue that she knows he did something. And she doesn't want to deny it. And she doesn't want to give a false thing because she knows that he did something. But, we'll see how it plays out. The warrants are kind of interesting. Here's another news clip on this coverage.
We get here. On the evening of January 28th, armed with a search warrant, Houston police raided a home on Harding Street in southeast Houston. They claimed a confidential informant had bought drugs and saw guns inside.
Narcotics activity was going on in that residence, specifically the sale of black tar heroin.
And a shootout with a couple who lived there.
Okay, so let me defend the chief here, even though he's running a shitty department and he screwed us up. He's only going by what the officer said and what the warrant said. Now, most cops and most chiefs and most judges and most people believe what cops put in a warrant because it's pretty serious when you lie and it comes out. You lose your job, you lose your career, you lose the warrant, you lose the case, and you might go to prison. So for the people running around and say, cops lie all the time in warrants, I don't believe that's true. That's why I think this is so damn serious. That's why they need to bring down the twin towers on his butt for doing this and make a huge example that you better not lie in a freaking warrant or we're going to come after you. A warrant is the last protection for oversight for police abuse and government abuse on the citizens. The reason cops have to get a warrant in the absence of consent or exigency is they must prove their case and show their probable cause and swear out an affidavit of truth on what they know so a judge can issue a warrant based on their statement. When cops are starting to get allowed to lie in warrants and nothing happens, it is done for your expectation of privacy and your protection under unlawful search and seizure.
Police killed Dennis Tuttle and Regina Nicholas. 5 officers were injured, 4 of them shot. The next day, police revealed they recovered small amounts of marijuana and cocaine inside, but no heroin and no 9mm handgun described in the warrant.
Okay. Not uncommon to do a warrant after a controlled buy and not find dope. Done many warrants, had a CI make multiple buys at one house, knew they were selling, we thought they got a shipment in, we hit the house, and we end up not finding the dope. Maybe we missed it, maybe it was hidden good, maybe they flushed it, maybe the last guy that came in took it out. But we know that we watched a guy buy dope there 3 times. So is it just to say because they didn't find dope, it's automatically he's lying? No. Is it to say that he didn't find a gun, automatically he's lying? No. But when they interview the informants and they say, we never said there was a gun, we've never been in that house, we never bought dope there, now we got issues.
Warrant.
Most people would call it a day after being shot and surviving. This man is 54 years old. He's the case agent on this case, and he was there in the front lines. If that doesn't tell you about the heart of the men and women we have the privilege to...
Again, the chief's only defending his guy on what he knows. He believes that the warrant was good, the cop was telling the truth, everybody was acting in good faith. And that's how 99% of the time they, police react to things like this. So I'll give him a little slack that he's not saying, jumping on, the guy's lying. I mean, he has no proof or evidence or even indication at this point that the guy's lying.
Lead, I don't know what will.
Police Chief Art Acevedo praised the case agent shot in the jaw for his bravery and courage. Just over a week later, the case begins to unravel as a veteran narcotics officer named on the warrant is relieved of duty. Then on February 15th, Chief Acevedo...
Who picked these pants out? I mean, they look like they're unbuttoned and they're about to fall off. Rick, why are you cracking on her pants? We're talking about crooked cop. It's just distracting. I'm like, why ain't her pants buttoned? Is there a zipper? Is it caught in a shirt? What? I digress. Let's go.
drops a bombshell.
When you lie on an affidavit, that's not sloppy. That's a crime.
Announcing the case.
No kidding. And I'm glad he said that. That is not sloppy and it's not an accident. You're signing on a penalty of perjury that everything you're saying is right. You're asking a judge to give you a warrant to invade someone's house and their privacy and to go in there with guns and dominate and detain and search their house. It ain't a mistake when you say a CI. Now, I'm not saying all mistakes might be off, but we'll see. I'll cover that when we go over the warrants.
Case agent the officer shot in the jaw will likely face criminal charges. Why? The chief says he lied about the confidential informant making a controlled drug buy at the house.
There's a difference between lying about who did the buy and not doing a buy at all.
In Houston.
As I'm reading all these articles, I'm seeing 7800 block, 78. The actual address, according to the warrant, 7815. But a lot of agencies just get lost in the 7800 block because it's in the 7800 block. But 7815 is the address. So in this article, they're saying that they investigated 109 drug cases that Goines filed based on search warrants between 2012 and present day. So, you know, what? 8 years, 6 years? He's done 109 warrants. That's quite a few warrants. I I mean, I've probably done close to 300, but 100, most cops do 1 or 2 warrants in their entire career. So this guy is very familiar with warrants. He's done a lot of warrants, and he knows the procedure. It's not like he's making an honest error because he's only done 2 warrants in his entire career. He's done 109 since 2012. That shows for a prosecutor that this guy has good working knowledge and good understanding of a search warrant. So this wasn't an unintentional error. Here's another little news report on Goines. Further, what I consider a track record in history of questionable behavior.
Exclusive details. Jeremy?
Well, Len, we reviewed more than 100 search warrant cases filed by Goines over the past 7 years, and a couple things stood out to us. The number of times he did not find the type of drug he was looking for, and the number of his cases that ended up going nowhere.
These 2 career criminals caught a big break after HPD officer Gerald Goines arrested them. Their cases thrown out because of sloppy police work. One prosecutor wrote Officer Gerald Goines never showed with search warrant after requesting for months. Another complained been waiting for months for officers to update the offense report. Still has not been done.
Is that acceptable?
Obviously not.
Dr. Jim Dozier is a former Houston police officer, DEA agent, and county prosecutor.
There needs to be better oversight of what that officer was doing.
Of 109 search warrant cases filed by Officer Goines, 20% were dismissed.
That's a pretty high rate. I don't think any of my warrants were ever dismissed. And like I said, I've written well over 300 warrants. To have 20% dismiss rate, that's pretty damn high.
For evidence issues or no probable cause. In 12% of those warrant cases, police did not find the drugs they were looking for.
That's quite a high percentage of searching for one drug and coming out with another.
And the problem with that is, if they searched for coke and they found only marijuana, if they searched for methamphetamine and only found marijuana, I'm okay. But if drug users tend to stay with their drug of choice on hard drugs, heroin, meth, and coke. Marijuana, they can all use marijuana with all those other drugs. So finding marijuana when you're looking for one of those drugs isn't that bad. But when you're looking for heroin and you find coke, or you're looking for coke and you find heroin, that's not really that common.
For instance, in one case, this search warrant stated an informant bought crack cocaine from a home, but later police only recovered marijuana. Another supposed crack buy only netted a few ounces of marijuana, some Xanax pills, and a bottle of codeine cough syrup.
That would be a red flag to me.
That coming from a former federal agent who's worked on hundreds of search warrants for drugs.
Most of the times we walked out with the narcotics that were described in the search.
I would agree with that. If not 99% of the time, you're going to find what you do. If you have a good probable cause and you have what's called fresh information, a warrant needs to be refreshed if it's stale. So if I get a warrant today and I sit on that warrant for 2 weeks, I can't go serve that warrant because all the information that I told the judge that was current when I got the warrant is no longer current. So I have to do another warrant to refresh my probable cause to show why it's still good, or I just need to go get a whole new warrant and say I waited too long. Most states, I think, is about a 72-hour, maybe a 5-day wait where you have to serve the warrant once it's signed. They don't want you waiting for your probable cause to go stale because then that creates issues when you're trying to defend it in court later.
Now, we also found issues with weapons. In more than 50 of his search warrants, Gerald Goines never listed any guns seized, even though he claimed informants saw guns during earlier drug buys. Meantime, the attorney for the officer told us she does not find any of this unusual or concerning.
Well, of course she's going to say that. I don't have a problem with not finding guns. I mean, a lot of crooks find guns. They either throw it, hide it, ditch it. If they do a crime with it, they'll throw it in a river. They're always changing guns. They're transferring guns. They have turf guns that they hide in the neighborhood, so cops don't catch it on them. They'll find it in a common area, so they can't pin it on anybody. So I'm not too concerned about an informant saying he saw a gun and then not finding a gun. That doesn't concern me. And I know somebody's going to be here, you're protecting the cop. I'm not protecting this guy, man. I think he ought to hang from the highest tree when I find out what the hell happened. But right now, we don't know because he ain't talking and he's in a hospital and he's lawyered up. Remember earlier I said politicians never let a good crisis go to waste. The DA is like, yeehaw, now I got a good way to get more prosecutors. She requests more money so she can review these 1,400 cases. So government will always have excuses when they get caught not doing their jobs, not covering their butts, not doing what they say they're doing. As soon as they get caught, it's always we need more money and we need more personnel. It's never we're incompetent, we weren't doing our jobs, we have lazy quota hire employees that don't do their job. We need 10 quota hire employees to do the job of one qualified employee. It's never those reasons. It's always the same for government, and you will hear this through your entire life. When government gets caught in one of their failures, it will be because they don't have enough money or they don't have enough personnel. And when you keep eating that, well, then you're an idiot.
Guys, we learned yesterday that Kim Ogg is going back to Commissioner's Court to make a request for more money. It was just last week
more money.
Turned her down. She was requesting a 31% budget increase, which would allow her to hire 102 more prosecutors.
31% increase and 100 more prosecutors? Rick, that's a good thing. Then they can... people, government will always say they need more. It's just ridiculous. I mean, how many cases are they prosecuting for freaking running a stop sign, for 2 miles over the speed limit, for, you know, a guy bumped into his wife when he was leaving and he was angry, so now they got a restraining order, they got a whole team of prosecutors trying to ruin his life. They do not need 100 more prosecutors and 30% increase. But you know what? If we can use this crooked cop as a way to get it, that now's the time to get. Now is when the stupid citizens will approve anything and we can get anything we ask for. It just drives me nuts. Okay, so here's a search warrant. The original search warrant that Goines did says right here, being duly sworn on oath, made the following statements. That means under perjury. That means every warrant I've ever done, I had to stand in front of the judge before he signed it, and he looked at me and said, raise your right hand. Do you swear that everything in this warrant is true and correct? And I said, I do. And then he signed it. So every time this cop does this and lied, there's big issues. Why they blacked out his name, I'm not sure. City of Houston, suspected place, 7815 Harding Street. Location ascribed, and they went into detail. This is why they require in a warrant you give detail. They don't want you hitting the wrong house. This cop swore that this was the location. It was in a 7800 block, located in Houston. One-story resident, constructed of wood, tan in color with white trim. The resident in question on the north side of Harding between the intersection of, and the front door is white in color. It faces south. The numbers 7815 are plainly displayed on the resident in question. This is why the location of your warrant has to be explained in specific details so there's no mistake. Because remember, if I get a warrant, I can call other guys and say, hey man, I got the warrant, go ahead and kick the door. I don't have to be there. Many times, sitting on a house, I either had a team sitting on a house or I was sitting on a house. The cop would call and say, judge just signed a warrant, kick the door. And we would go in. But we were on a house, he was there, one of us left and got the warrant. We knew we were on the right house. It's not like we're running around in the middle of the night saying, hey man, I think it's the house on the corner. It's got a car, a beige Pontiac parked in front. That's the house, go kick the door. That's not how it goes. So when we don't know the name of the person that we're going to arrest, we describe him in general terms, such as following name and or description. Hereafter, suspect party, because we don't know his name. A white male, whose name is unknown. He's approximately 55 years old, 5 feet 11 inches, 180 pounds. If this description matches the guy they killed, then we know this warrant was issued for this guy at this house. The problem is going to be, sometimes when you're doing a lot of warrants, how many warrants did this cop do in this time? He was under pressure to produce more. If he did 4 warrants, sometimes I helped other cops with warrants because they weren't as familiar with warrants. So I was helping them with a warrant while I was doing a warrant, or I would do a warrant for them. They would give me the info. I'd type it, give it back to them. They'd put their name on it. They would swear that it's true and correct as if they wrote it, and then they would go turn in the warrant as the affidavit as their own. It's not crooked. We're not conspiring. It's easier if I have a template and I can type out a warrant in 30 minutes, whereas a new guy may take him 6 hours, especially if you have people waiting or you have evidence that's perishable about to leave, getting sold, you're locking down a house, you're tying up resources. So all these things come into play. So if this guy matches this, to me it shows that for some reason Goines had the right house and the right suspect. Why did he get it wrong for the confidential informants saying they didn't go in there? Now, there's always the other side that the confidential informants are lying. Rick, they wouldn't lie. They're confidential informants. Well, I'm just telling you. Those are some of the things. They may be just fake defenses for Officer Goines, but, I mean, if his statement was, look, I did this, unfortunately, he better have a witness. I mean, we never sent in a confidential informant without 2 people sitting there and searching him. We searched the money. We actually videotaped the money. We double-checked the serial numbers. Both officers signed that the money we gave him was the serial numbers that we had photocopied. We gave him the money. We searched him to make sure he didn't have any other money. We searched him to make sure he didn't have any dope on him. And then we watched him, and we visually watched him go in the house and leave the house. And if we ever lost sight of him, then that would be in the warrant. We lost sight of him because there was a warrant, because there were shots fired, because people started running the house, because we were compromised and somebody called the house. You know, sometimes we lost sight of him. And that didn't kill the case, but it's not as clean as if you did it right. So hopefully this Goines has a witness, that another officer that was with him. And if the other officer lied and conspired with him, then they both ought to go to prison for life. But I digress. Let's get back to the warrant. So here is what he's describing, what he wants. Controlled substance, drug, heroin. Doesn't say anything about marijuana. Doesn't say anything about cocaine. Well, he doesn't have to say anything about marijuana and cocaine. If he finds those drugs when he's looking for heroin, he can seize them. They're still fine. It's still found under the warrant. No problem. The problem is, why would he put marijuana and cocaine here if he had no, suspicion that they were using that? He put heroin because he said the confidential informant bought heroin from him. Now, in an earlier where he was disciplined, if you remember, he had, I thought it was crack cocaine in his car that he never booked. So if he's keeping drugs in his car, that leaves reasonable suspicion that maybe he's keeping those to plant on search warrants where he doesn't find drugs. And, the drugs they found after they killed these people, since they found marijuana and cocaine, were they actually there, or did Goines do it? I think he was shot in the face and taken away by ambulance. So the odds of him planting evidence is probably slim to none. Did he call one of the other officers, say, hey man, grab some coke out of my car and put it? Again, I've seen cops lie to protect their own career and to cover their own butt. I haven't seen cops lie and risk their career to cover an officer who was lying and doing something crooked. I just don't see it. I have seen cops saying, I didn't see. I have cops saying, I don't know. I have cops denying. But to flat out corroborate a lie for an officer, I haven't seen it. Okay, so here's where he gets his probable cause on why he believes there's dope in there. On the 27th, a narcotic investigation was being conducted at the above residence. Again, he confirms the address that they were conducting a narcotic. If they were conducting a narcotic investigation, there ought to be records, radio traffic. They were staking out the house, code 5ing. Units were surrounding the house. Units were sending in a CI. Units met with a CI. There has to be documentation that this went down. They can't just say this went down in a probable cause. All this has to be documented. Who searched him? Who was there when they searched him? Where was the money? Who took the money? Where did they get the money? They signed it out. Normally a supervisor or sergeant will give the money and sign it out for a controlled buy. Where is that sergeant? Where did the money go to? Did they book the money as evidence when he came out? Did they book the dope when they came out? All those things have to be worked out in this investigation. and it better be done right, because I'm telling you, man, this is serious. Okay, received the above information. A male whose name is unknown was selling narcotics. That's kind of weak. Your affiant had previously received information. That's kind of a weak statement to me. It should be something like, your affiant met with a confidential informant who will be referred to as confidential or CI1 from this point on. CI1 relayed to me that he knew they were selling dope there, and he had several of his friends that had bought dope there. He had used dope in the residence, and he knows that they store dope in there. That's would make a more reasonable statement. To say your affiant previously received information that a male was there selling narcotics, that's pretty broad. Okay, so I got a problem with that. This investigation has been ongoing for approximately 2 weeks. 2 weeks of an investigation by the Narcotics Division? Where are all the records? Where are all the other officers that staked out this house, that knew this investigation was going on? Where are all the officers that talked to Officer Goines about his probable cause? They had to brief every time they went out to this house and conducted an investigation. If they staked the house out, if they took pictures of people coming and going, if they logged plates parked in front of the car. I mean, normally when you're doing a narcotic investigation, you do all that. You want to set up a good, standard of like, look, we watched a house for a week. During that time, we had 14 cars come and go between the hour of so-and-so. When we ran the plates and we ran the registered owner of those plates, it came back to 14 different drug offenders who had prior history of. I mean, it's so easy to build a case when you're working on something for 2 weeks. Where the hell is all the evidence? Where's all the background? Where's all the corroborating officers and supervisors and records and radio and dispatch logs? This is an easy case to corroborate what's going on. There should be no reason they can't either prove this is true or prove this is a flat-out lie. This investigation has been ongoing for 2 weeks. Your affiant contacted the below confidential informant regarding the above location mentioned. Your affiant met with the confidential informant. Further, in this narcotic investigation, the confidential informant was met at a predetermined location to assist the officers in the narcotics. When you meet a guy, that location has to be secure. It's got to be a room. It's got to be a place where you can search him, where you can give him the money. It's usually a substation, someplace that you have control of, some sort of office environment to where you can do all this. Then you put him in your car. Then you drive him around a corner. You kick him out of your car and you have him walk there. Or you drop him off at his bike and he rides his bike there. All this has to be documented. Are there no freaking cameras at any of these police stations? Can they not go back and get cameras on where this confidential informant met, where the cops drove him there, when he went to the house? Why didn't anybody videotape it? Why didn't anybody take a damn picture of the dude that answered the door? Nobody knows what this guy looks like. Why didn't they stake the house out after the control buy and wait for the guy to leave? They could have followed him. They could have seen what car he got in. Did they not run the plates at the house to see who they come back registered to? Then they could do a reverse on the plate for the RO, for the registered owner, and then they could do a CDL and get a picture, and then they could show that picture to the confidential informant and say, dude, is this the guy you bought dope from? I mean, there's ways to, this kind of warrant is kind of a little weak, but when he gets down to justifying the no knock warrant, I'm going to kind of be on his side, and everybody's going to say I'm taking the cop's side. But anyway, your affiant searched confidential informant and found confidential information to be clear of the narcotics paraphernalia. The confidential informant was advised by your affiant of the above location in question. Narcotics were being sold and stored. Confidential informant was provided U.S. currency. Where are the copies of the U.S. currency? Where was the serial number logged? If they did a control buy, that has to be documented. You're fined for the purpose of buying narcotics, individual located above location. The fine observed the confidential informant. Here we go. I'm going to move this up here. The confidential informant met by mail inside. So he observed him go into the location in question, directly to the location. Okay, who else observed him? You know, this sounds like your affiant, which is the officer who writes the warrant, did all this by himself. He did this with a team. Nobody runs a confidential informant by themselves. If Houston PD has one officer doing all this, they need to have their ass sued back to the freaking dark ages, because that's absolutely outrageous and it's not a standard operating procedure for drug informant and buys and all that crap. So there has to be other officers who can corroborate this. The affiant observed confidential informant leave the residence in question and return directly to your affiant. Okay, so, I mean, not as clear cut, I would have videotaped him leaving and videotaped him coming to me. But, I mean, with videotapes, it's easy to videotape this, and it makes your case strong. Confidential informant surrendered a quantity of brown powder substance to your find. A confidential informant advised the substance was purchased as boy. The term boy is a street name for heroin. So again, he bought heroin. He's looking for heroin, but they found cocaine and marijuana, no heroin. Confidential informant, the substance was purchased from a male described as above, whose name is unknown. Well, why didn't you try to get a picture? Why didn't you stake out the house and follow him when he left at the grocery store and snap a picture? Why didn't you follow him to work? Why didn't you do something in this 2-week investigation to identify this guy? That's sloppy and weak police work in my book. Rick, you don't understand. We're busy and we got 14. If he's running 14 cases and 14 informants, then I'll give him credit. He is busy and maybe they don't have time to work this. But when you get sloppy like that, that's how people die. And that's the whole reason for these procedures and policies to be time restrictive. You have to do it right by the numbers so this shit doesn't happen. Confidential informant advised, Quality Brown, confidential informant also advised that in addition to substance, care, custody, and control of the male described and whose name is unknown, this substance was packaged in large quantity of plastic bags. So this is where they get, we're going to a house that's selling. This is for sales and distribution. This makes the case a little bit more because most people who are selling and distribution, they have to have firearms to defend their stuff from crooks. They don't want to get ripped off. That's why drugs and guns go together. Drug dealers know more than liberals. Liberals will tell you, you don't need guns, the cops will protect you. Drug dealers know that if I got drugs, I need to have a gun to protect my damn stuff, or I know crooks are going to steal it from me, because the cops ain't going to protect me. But I digress. Confidential informant was searched again after completing investigation and found clear of any amount of narcotics, meaning he didn't have any hidden. He didn't buy 4 bags and only turned over 3 to the officer, because that's why you do the search afterwards. Surveillance was placed on the above location by narcotics officers. Okay, if you got surveillance, great. Confidential stated that a weapon was observed in the residence as above location. That's kind of common that they normally would have weapons, even if you didn't see it. The weapon was in possession of the above male, whose name is unknown, but was more fully described above. The weapon appeared to be a semi-automatic handgun, 9mm caliber. I mean, if this confidential informant can read the 9mm on the gun, I mean, I can say semi-automatic, blue, stainless steel, describe it that way, but to say a semi-automatic handgun of a 9mm caliber, that means he either saw the bullets and he knows what a 9mm looks like and didn't confuse it for a 40 or a 45 or a 32 or a 380. He knew it was a 9mm. How? That's something I'd be asking the informant. Well, they did ask the informant. The informant said, I never said there was a gun because I never went in the house and I never bought dope there. Somebody's lying. Confidential informant was advised the male whose name is unknown to return more boy if he needed it. So the guy he bought the dope from told the CI, hey, come back if you need some more. And normally, if you're going to do a buy bust, you would have your informant contact this dude and ask him to buy large amounts. Like if I bought 2 ounces, next time I'd be like, dude, I'm coming back, I got cash. Can you get me 4 ounces? Yeah. Okay, I'll be there at 8. Then you kick the door at 8 because then you know substance is going to be there because the drug dealer is expecting the same guy that bought drugs from him to come buy more drugs. So you know there's going to be drugs in the house. I don't know who's running this freaking narcotics unit here, whether they got Ray Charles in charge of training, but there just seems to be a lot of questions here that's not clear in this warrant. Quantity of brown harding was recognized by sight and texture as heroin by Eurofiant. It should have been recognized by sight. It should have been tested. And it should have had a presumptive test. Then it should have been logged in. And part of it should have been sent away for a good qualitative analysis to prove, have somebody else test it to prove what the quantity is, how strong it was, etc. Where the hell is all the paperwork for that? How is nobody seeing this? Where's the sergeant? Why isn't there a log on where they found it? Who booked the evidence in? Now obviously in this case, after they did the warrant, they couldn't do any of that because everybody was shot up. But in this case, they had plenty of time to do that. Why wasn't it done? And here's where he justifies the confidential informant is reliable. The confidential informant has provided informant and assistance to officers in the past, at least 10 prior occasions that led to narcotic arrest and seizures. So this confidential informant has worked for him for a while. He's given them at least 10 prior cases where he said, dude, this dude's selling dope. They did a bust, they arrested him, and they found dope. So that's how you make your confidential informant a confidential, reliable informant. I would list him as reliable informant, but CI, confidential informant, that's fine. Confidential informant proven credible and reliable. On many prior occasions, officers made arrest seizure based on the information provided by this guy. So when the judge reads this, he's like, you know what? Your probable cause is this one confidential informant. You don't really say how you know this guy or what he's done for you. So that's why this statement is here. So the judge can go, okay, you're basing your warrant on a confidential informant that you used 10 prior times, that you watched go into this house, that you did a controlled buy, and that you seized drugs. Any judge would sign this warrant, thinking it's true. I mean, they can only go what they... So if somebody wants to blame the judge, I don't blame the judge, I don't blame the DA, and I don't blame the chief. I blame whoever the hell lying in here, whether it's the confidential informant or the cops. All right, so let's go down here. Fine request the search. Okay, here's where he just basically says, I want to search the place. Let's see. A weapon was observed during a narcotic investigation. Your affiant believed that the weapon is being kept at the same location where the narcotics are stored. Based on your affiant's experience, when weapons are used and displayed at narcotic transactions, it is there for the protection of narcotics and to buy time so the narcotics may be destroyed. So he's justifying why the exigency. This is creating the exigency to avoid the knock and notice. Knock and notice is required by law that cops bang on the door and say, please search warrant, demand entry, please search warrant. We had to say it 3 times before we kicked the door unless we had exigency. Exigency can be this. Exigency can be as soon as we're walking up the steps before we knock, somebody yells, it's the cops, flush the dope, get the guns. Now we can kick the door. We don't need to knock and ask permission. So exigency can be created in different ways. This cop is saying the exigency here is they've got a gun. In my experience, guns will be used to protect it. Therefore, we need to enter without letting them know so they can't get to the gun, so maybe we can surprise them. Well, guess what? They did surprise them. They did get to guns, and they shot 5 of you dummies coming in the door at the wrong address, at the wrong place, and then you killed the dog and the 2 occupants based on this lying warrant or lying informant. Somebody's lying. And the warrant was signed and delivered. Thanks for the person that gave me this. I'm not saying his name. I appreciate you sending me a copy of this warrant. I will post this warrant in case it's not publicly already on my website, and I'll put a link in the description. Now let's look at the other warrant. I know I'm going long. Now this warrant is got by another officer who's searching the cop's cell phone. So this isn't going, this is after they figure out the guy's lying, and then they want to look at his phone. His phone records should be able to corroborate how many times he called the CI. When did he call the CI? When the control buy was made, did he call the CI? When they made the control buy, was there calls to and from the CI to other agents? Were they communicating, etc.? So there's a lot of information, and they'll be able to get this through the phone records. If he was using a city phone, they can get the records with no warrant because the government owns the records because they own the phone. So they don't need a warrant. But they may go ahead and get a warrant just in case they want to prosecute this guy to make sure there's no loophole they can get out of. But I don't think they need a warrant for his company cell phone. So let's look. This is where we'll be able to tell a little bit on where the investigation going on. This is only one warrant, and we don't know what's going on, but you can tell by what they're looking for and what they're searching for on where this investigation is going. You're compliant, under oath, haven't made RBAS, Peace Officer Plan, host BDs currently assigned Special Investigations Unit, Homicide Division. Why is the Homicide Division working? Because 2 freaking people died, and now they need to do a homicide investigation on why they're freaking dead. So Homicide's got the case. Okay. Complaint attached to. You are hereby commanded forthwith search place named within. To wit, Model A1549 FCC. This is a phone, which is currently located at the Travis Houston or Harris County in Houston, Texas, and was owned by and was found in the possession of Suspect 1, Gerald Goines. So he is a suspect, and they want to search this. So he has to justify why he wants to search this and what he's searching for and what is probable cause to search. Okay? Here's where he explains what he wants to seize. I want to search for and seize all evidence that may be included, but not limited to. And this is where we just list everything and we cover everything. So in case we stumble across something, it's covered in the warrant. Not limited to photographs, videos, text, media. And anybody writing warrants on cell phones, this isn't a bad little section to go ahead and copy them and just keep for when you're searching cell phones, because they do a pretty good job at listing stuff here. Text, multimedia messages, SMS, MSS, any call history or call logs, any emails, instant messages, or other forms of communication, meaning if he's using apps and texting through the apps, he can go get that, which said phone is capable of internet browsing, browsing history, stored global positioning, any GPS data, contact information, including email addresses, physical addresses, mailing addresses, phone numbers, any voicemail message containing on said phone, any recordings contained on the phone, any social media posts or messages, or any images associated thereto included but not limited to that on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So I can search other ones beside these because I said not limited to. And any documents and or evidence showing the identity and ownership, that's what we call indicia. Indicia shows ownership and identity of the user of said described items, computer files, fragments of files. Sometimes when we search a phone or computer, we'll get a fragmented file and only get part of a document or part of a picture, and we want to use it. And if you don't put something like that in there, sometimes the defense will say, Your Honor, he asked for all photographs. This is not a photograph. It's a fragment of a photograph. It's only 1/3 of the photograph, and I want to suppress because he didn't specifically request to find a partial photograph. So then you add, you learn as you do these, as you get the defense attorney pulling these tricks, you learn to add all these in. So this is a pretty good little statement that covers everything you're going to find on fragments of file, all tracking data, waypoints, CD-ROM, CDs, DVD, thumb drives. Sometimes that they'll copy a CD on there. They'll have things, flash drives, and any other equipment attached or embedded, meaning any programs, etc., of the above described device that can be used to store electronic data, metadata, or temporary files. And they want to subject the phone to a forensic examination. This means if you don't put this in your warrant, you can seize all this that you find, but if you give the phone to a forensic examiner, that forensic examiner has to go get a warrant to do his search of the phone. If you include forensic examination in your warrant, now you can give it to a forensic examiner and you don't have to go get a second warrant. It saves them time. Some forensic examiners say, you know what, I ain't doing your warrants for you. If you don't include it in a warrant, you go get a warrant and then bring it to me and then I'll do it. So by including this, it makes it a good warrant. I know we're at 52 minutes, man. I'm getting hoarse too, but this is a complicated case and I want you to be able to understand it and, educational wise, be able to articulate why you believe what you want. It's easy for me to say the cop lied, the confidential informant lied, the chief lied, the cops are crooked. It's easy to say that, but I'm trying to paint a picture and give you more information so you can make an educated decision. And so when you read other warrants and do other things, you can understand what goes into preparing them, what the DA is looking for, what the prosecutor is looking for, what the defense is looking for. And I'm trying to do this in a very short time period. But the more you hear it through repetitive, because I've done a few of these, the better you will be at picking out things. Okay, peace officer so-and-so, he's asking for the warrant. He's reaffirming all what he's looking for. Your affiant has probable cause, said to believe the reason for the following facts. I always put my headings in bold like this, all caps and underlined. If you notice when Goines did his warrant kind of ran together. It wasn't what I call a good warrant. This is a good warrant. It's got paragraphs. It's written well. This is a homicide detective, so he does better warrants. I don't know I forgot who the cop was. I think it was Bass or whatever. But this warrant to me is a much better, well-written, prepared warrant than Goines' warrant. Goines' warrant is more what I call the drug guys that just want to go on the next case, get me a warrant, put in the names, plug this. They don't really write it. They haven't had to defend. They just kind of go through the motions. So I can tell the difference when I look at a warrant between a well-written, experienced officer warrant and somebody that's just going through the motions and does sloppy, crappy warrants. I wasn't too impressed with Goines' warrant. This warrant is better to me. But I digress. That's my personal opinion. Affiant, Sergeant Richard Days, certified peace officer, blah, blah, Baton Rouge. He worked there. He was aware of incidents involving police officer involved shooting internal. So this is kind of like his hero section saying what my experience is and why I'm writing this warrant, Judge, and why you should believe me. Affiant and his partner. He's got a partner, Emma. Also certified police officer, kind of covers her. I learned after speaking to Lieutenant Hicks, meaning Lieutenant Hicks said, dude, I need you to do a warrant on freaking Goines. He screwed this warrant up. People are dead. It's your case. Get a warrant and search his damn phone. That's what this really says. You're fine to learn from speaking to Lieutenant Hicks. I'm just giving you insight of what cops says. Certified peace officer employed to use police search warrant, executed the warrant. You're fine to learn, Lieutenant Hicks, that during the execution of search warrant, 4 Houston police officers were shot. 2 homeowners were shot and killed. Affiant learned from Lieutenant Hicks that the search warrant was obtained by Officer Goines of the Houston Police Department Narcotic Division. Affiant obtained a copy of the signed search warrant and the accompanying affidavit, documents that you're affiant to be aware based on his training experience or government documents. Affiant reviewed the document and learned that Officer Goines swore to the following facts. So, again, this officer, even though this, now, I don't know if he attaches, I haven't read it completely, but in something like this, I would put in this warrant, Exhibit A is the attached affidavit signed by Goines. So the judge could go read the entire warrant if he want to. That way I don't have to repeat everything the warrant says. I attach the warrant, I incorporate that warrant as part of my affidavit, and now my warrant is more complete and that warrant becomes part of my affidavit. That's the way I would do it. I don't know if they don't do that here in Texas, or if he didn't do it, or if he'd just rather do it this way because it's easier. I don't care. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just giving you a little insight on it. Narcotic investigation conducted, blah, blah, blah. You're fine, privilege receiving information in mail. Confidential warrant clear narcotics. U.S. currency. Obtained confidential term boy. So this is basically what Goines put in his warrant. So he had to retype it versus just attaching it and saying, see the incorporated Exhibit A of Goines' warrant. And that would have saved all this. Confidential informant had a weapon in sight on the question. The weapon was in possession. This is all what he already read. Poly of brown heroin. You're affiant learned from Officer Mara. So when we learn things from other officers, we have to put in there why we believe them and their other officers. He's a certified employee of Houston Police Department. Involved in the execution of narcotic search warrants. Affiant spoke with Officer Bryan, who informed him, meaning the guy writing the warrant, Bass, spoke with Officer Bryan, who told him, hey, I went to the hospital after the shooting and spoke to Goines about the confidential informant. That Officer Goines referred to in a warrant to obtain a search warrant. Officer Bryan obtained the name of the confidential informant from Goines, who wrote the name on a sheet of paper. So I think he was shot in a jar of mouth, so maybe he didn't know it. How the hell do you get in a house with a warrant and you don't know who the CI was? I don't know. Normally in a briefing before you do a warrant, before you do a search warrant, all the cops are briefed. They're handed out an ops order, and that ops order has all the information. Maybe this guy was protecting his CI and nobody knew it. Everybody knows your CI because they're following him. You're watching him. They've ran him. They're with you when you search him. They're with you when you get him on. They know who he is so they don't shoot him in case the shooting go down while you're doing it. It's not like they don't know who the confidential informant is. This guy did a warrant with him and didn't know who the CI was? That's smoke. And where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't buy it. Anyway, for reasons of personal safety and security will be referred to as CI1. Okay, I got that. After I spoke with Officer Robert, a certified peace officer who stated along with his who went to interview CI1. So now this officer is saying, he's telling the judge, hey, after I found out who the CI was for this warrant, because people died and officers were shot, I wanted to talk to the CI and confirm what he said in the warrant. That's good police work to me. Let's see. Officer Goines stated CI1 stated that he or she had worked with Officer Goines for the past several months on narcotics. When you talk about our past on several narcotics transactions, when you're talking about several narcotic crimes, that tells experienced officers that they had a relationship. They knew each other. They were comfortable. They understand procedures. They know what's routine. They know what standard operating procedures are and how things are supposed to work. So when something is changed, not only do other officers know, but your CI knows. Sometimes damn CIs were sharper than other officers. They'd be like, hey, man, nobody searched me. Hey, man, I got this I got my pocket knife in my pocket, man. Do you guys want to keep it or take it? And this is after he was searched by some lame quota hire that did a crap-ass search, and the CI ended up telling us he had a pocket knife in his pocket. So, things like this happen. But anyway, I digress. Did not work for him. This is key. The CI said he did not work with him on the case involving the warrant for 7815 Harding. Now, how did the CI know this? Because they brought maps and pictures and they showed him and they said, dude, How many cases did you work with? When was your last case? Where were you on the date that you were supposed to be buying dope? Where were you on this date? Oh man, I don't know. I was working with another officer, or I was out of town, or I was with my sister, or I was in a hospital getting some freaking drug, methadone or whatever. Somehow they know that he didn't work there. So the CI said, hey man, I wasn't with him on this case for the Harding. Obviously, we learned that the CI, that in the past, there had been times where Officer Goines paid him money, but did not require him to do actual work. Now, this can be a big deal depending on how it is. I know a lot of guys, when you work CIs, you want to stay on their good side. If I had a guy feed me information and I ran into him and he's like, dude, man, can you spot me a little bit? I'm kind of hungry, man. I ain't eating. I'd toss him $5 or $10. It'd be off the bucks. Nobody would know. I'd want to stay on his good side. He hooked me up with some good shit. I'd give him $10, say, yo, man, go get lunch. And there would be no record of that. So for a CI to say in the past that he paid him or gave him money and did not require him to do actual work, I would want to know the circumstances of this. Did he pay him and say, dude, if anybody asks, you bought dope, now I got issues? If he gave him money to go at lunch because he knew him and they had worked together, I'm okay with that. Somebody else may not be. Okay, Affiant learned that Lieutenant Todd, a certified peace officer, went back and spoke to Officer Goines and again requested the name of the confidential informant that Officer Goines used. Why? Because they're like, dude, you told us you used this guy. We just talked to this guy and he said you didn't use it. Let's get a lieutenant who ain't doing nothing else but standing around freaking waiting to get on TV. Let's make him go ask him who the hell the CI is. Lieutenant goes back, asks the confidential informant, Goines, who did you use? Officer Goines wrote down the name and gave the name to Lieutenant Todd, observing the affiant's name from the first name given. Let me read that again slower because it's basically a different person. Officer Goines wrote down a name and gave that name to Lieutenant Todd. Lieutenant Todd observed that it was a different name from the first name given. That's a clue. Everybody's bells should have been ringing at that point like, oh shit, this guy don't even know. Now, somebody could have went, you know what, the guy was just shot. He might be out of it. He's probably under drugs. Maybe he gave the wrong name. He's working a lot of cases. Maybe this wasn't a big deal for them. Again, I don't know how many active cases this guy's had open. How many cases was he, because sometimes I'm working 2 or 3 cases. I've got a case that I got to go to court on tomorrow, so I'm reading that case file to try and get those facts straight so when I testify, I'm on the right case. Meanwhile, in the middle of reading that and studying to testify the next day, I'm trying to write a warrant for one case, and I've got some other guy that I'm filing on a warrant we served 3 days ago that I need to get in to the DA because he's asking for more info. So getting a little confused, I can see it happening, but I would have to know. Again, it's all about reasonable. What was going on? How many cases? Was he actively involved in 13 cases and he had a bunch of cases open? He was working on 3 or 4 warrants. So is it reasonable that he got the CIs mixed up? He was just shot. He's on medication. There's a lot of reasons why he might have got this mixed up. Obviously, everyone else is like, oh my God, he lied. He gave the first false name and the second name. He must be lying. Well, could be. If and buts coconuts, we'll find out. Affiant, along with partner, went and reviewed CI number 2. So now we have a second name given by Goines. He stated the affiant, Officer Rodriguez, that he or she was confidential informant for Officer Goines. CI2 stated that the last work he had done for Officer Goines was on Friday, January 25th. According to CI2, Goines had him do a buy from a house on Napoleon Street, a location in the greater 3rd Houston area. Okay, I don't really care about that. Now, this might be important for somebody that knows the area because if this location is really far, they're probably trying to make sure people know that, look, this isn't like right next door or across the street. This is in a complete different area of town. I'm not familiar with the geography. Maybe that's why that comment was put in there. I'm assuming this was put in there for a reason. I just don't know why. Affiant reviewed the address and determined that it was, maybe it was. It was 5 miles from the house located on Harding. That's key. 5 miles, it's not likely that the CI would be like, you know what? I thought it was this house, but maybe it was the one next door. Maybe it was the one across the street. This is 5 miles away. So the CI, this corroborates that the CI is not making a wrong identification of the house. And I think this warrant was on the 27th, and he last worked for him on the 25th. So now it's leading like, shit, this guy's giving us 2 CIs and neither one of them bought. What the hell's going on? Officer Goines was not at that location when she or she entered the residence. So when he bought at this location, the officer who had him buy wasn't there. That's very odd. You don't send a CI in to buy dope for you, and you're not watching him, controlling him, searching him. I mean, what's the point? Why do you want to send him in when you're not there? That's very bad. Either procedure, either it didn't happen that way, either the CI's lying, or Officer Goines is a freaking nutbag. All right, but I digress. All right, stated that purchasing 2 bags of heroin, he called Officer Goines to see where the officer was located. CI2 stated that they find that Goines stated that he had to leave the area and would get back. Are you freaking kidding me? This is the first time I'm really reading this. You have a CI in buying dope for you and you leave? What does that mean to the layperson? That means I can't use the dope. I can't use the CI. I don't know if he kept it. I don't know if I gave him money. I don't know if he got more money. If he gets shot and killed, he's working for me. He's an agent of mine because I sent him in there and I failed to protect him. This has all kind of issues. I don't have a clue what the hell they're doing in Houston, but I know if I was a cop, if this homicide investigator is the cop that I think he is, he was probably like, what the hell is going, that crazy, is he freaking, where the hell was his backup? Where was the other officers? Why wasn't the sergeant involved? What is this guy doing? Just running around saying, yo, dude, picking up CIs on the road, go buy me some dope. What the, all right. With 2 purchases of bags of heroin, CI stated they find Officer Goines returned to pick up the 2 bags of heroin approximately 6 hours later. Are you freaking kidding me? This CI could have sold it. He could have cut it. He could have made half of it powder and half. He could have used it. I mean, it's just crazy. You've got a CI. Where the hell happened to this heroin? I mean, there's no chain of custody. You can't use it. You have to book it or destroy it. Where the hell is this heroin? Hell, that's another case. This is what you call a bucket case. Because every time you ask one question, you end up picking up 2 other cases. Because this is another case now. Where the hell is this heroin? Where the hell were you for 6 hours? And why the hell did you send a CI in and you left him? Are you freaking kidding me? Oh my God. All right. Affiant showed CI2 photographs of the residence located at 17 Hardy. This is where this cop is like, look, I want to make sure that you've never been to this freaking house. Because I just had an officer tell me that he used you to buy dope at this house. He did a warrant, and he gave us one CI who was different, and he said he wasn't there. I got to make damn sure you weren't there. Here's a picture of this house. Are you sure you've never been in this house? That's why this was put in here. CI stated Affiant he was not at the location where where he or she purchased that heroin. Affiant learned from Sergeant Poole, now we're talking another officer, certified peace officer, Houston Police Department, Homicide Division, showed a photo array containing a photograph of Dennis Tuttle. Dennis Tuttle is the guy that got killed. They want to make sure that this CI never bought dope from Tuttle, so there's no confusion. They're making a case to make sure that somebody can't come back later and say somebody was confused and people can't change their stories. They're locking down stories and making sure they have good information so when they base their warrant, they can honestly say, I believe that the information I have is true. Why do I believe it? I showed him a picture of a house, and I showed him a dead guy, and he said he didn't buy from either of them, and he's the second CI that Goines told us that he bought from. So they're locking down this warrant. Along with 5 other individuals, State Sergeant Poole, he or she purchased narcotics from the individual in Frode. He said he did not recognize any of the male's pictures. So that says he didn't buy dope from Tuttle. Okay, you know what? And just a little side note, this has been done before, and then later, right before trial, you show him a picture of this guy, and he's like, you know what? I think I did buy dope from him, but it wasn't for you guys. It was a while ago, and he was a 7-Eleven, and you're like, shit! You told us before you didn't recognize. So that just because the CI didn't recognize him, it's not a clear-cut case. Affiant Officer Rodriguez obtained a list of confidential informants that had worked with Goines. So now they're like, shit, he's already given us 2. We need to find all his damn CIs and question them all and see if we can find the CI that worked at his house to make sure that either Goines is lying or that maybe we just have the wrong damn CI and Goines is so messed up on drugs from being shot, he can't remember which one did it. So they get all the informants. Affiant and Rodriguez interviewed all the confidential informants, all denied making a buy from Goines at this residence. This doesn't look good for Officer Goines right now, okay? And these guys, I think, are doing a pretty good job at painting this picture. So good for them. They're not where everybody says the blue line, the cops are lying, they're just covering up, they never protect, they always protect their own, they stand behind. That's not true, man. Cops don't want dirty cops. These cops working this case are doing a good job. They're not leaving loopholes. They're not leaving ways for Goines to get out of this. They are covering every rabbit hole that it takes them down. They're running it till the end. All right. Officer Brian stated he received a phone call from Hughes Police Department John Lewis, who stated that Officer Goines told him that there were drugs. Oh, shit. Now we have another case. Remember I talked about all these bucket cases? Officer Brian stated he received a call from John Lewis, who stated that Officer Goines told him he had drugs in a center console of his city-issued vehicle. So let me get this straight, Officer Goines, because this is going to be when I interview him. Officer Goines, you gave us 2 CIs that didn't buy the drugs, and you gave us 2 different names, so I was thinking maybe you were a little out of it and you were under the influence of drugs. However, shortly thereafter, you contacted another officer and told him that you suddenly remembered you had drugs in your county-issued vehicle and you wanted him to go get it. So you can remember that, but you can't remember who the CI is, where 4 officers just got shot and 2 people are dead, and a dog? Dude, I'd be all over this dude, but anyway, I digress. I'm not running this case. Officer Brian stated that he went to Officer Goines' city vehicles, went to the center console, and obtained 2 bags of heroin. Now, my question is here. They were looking for heroin in this warrant. They found coke and marijuana. Only because Goines got shot and was not able to plant the heroin that he had in his car and say they found it is the reason the heroin is still in his car. I'm jumping to conclusions. I'm making this up. I don't know anything. But to me, that sounds reasonable. Why the hell else is he bringing heroin to a search warrant where he's looking for heroin? Now, somebody may say, you know what? When he got shot, he had found heroin and he somehow made it to his car and stuck him in the center console before he went to the hospital. If that's his story, dude, he better come up with a better one. Officer Brian stated that he took the 2 bags of heroin straight to the laboratory, requested priority testing. Officer Brian stated to the affiant that he had never seen the 2 bags of heroin. That's good, because if he said he saw them before, his shit would be weak too. Prior to him retrieving them from the center console, affiant observed that this is a contradiction of the narcotics search warrant affidavit, which indicates Officer Bryant recognized the substance purchased by CI heroin. So it sounds to me that Officer Brian, I'm reading this and I'm throwing in a lot of things, so I may be missing it. I'm not reading it just by itself and critical. It sounds like Officer Brian may have already said that he recognized the substance purchased by the CI as heroin. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm just kind of going through this. In addition, Officer Brian stated the affiant that he retrieved cell phone belonging to Officer Brian, both his city-issued cell phone and his personal cell phone. That will be a piggyback warrant on this warrant. They will do a second warrant and say, on this date, I issued a warrant for a cell phone issued to so-and-so and his work phone. I now have possession of his personal cell phone, and I would like to search that cell phone for the same items as I searched for this one, using the same probable cause affidavit, everything I use in this warrant. It'll be a short warrant, and the judge will say, no freaking problem, search his cell phone just like you're searching his other phone. But I digress. I'm not running this case. I don't know if they did that. I would be doing that. Officer Bryant stated he gave cell phones to Officer Lewis, who turned them over to Lieutenant Todd, who was just standing around waiting for something to do, who then turned it to your phone to the items. Oh, she just gave it to the affiant. Goes, yo, man, here's another phone for you. Get a warrant on this one. All right. So, this is a very, very telling warrant on what's going on, but there's still so much more we don't know and so much more information. I will put both of these warrants on my website, and I will put links to them in the description. This is a very, very serious case, and the FBI is involved. The DA should be involved. The DA should not only not be reviewing their cases, they should be running an independent mirror investigation of this with the PD, will have their own investigators and make sure everything's done by the numbers. Because if they don't, what you're going to have is if Houston PD ends up charging this guy, then you're going to bring in all the cops that worked on this on why they didn't like Goines and why they worked together and why they were buddies and why they planted evidence on Goines, etc. Whereas if you have the DA's office, an independent organization, or the Texas Rangers and the FBI, all investigations should find the same damn thing. And if they don't, then you can figure out which one's correct and which one isn't. The DA should be running an investigation with this in my book, but that's up to them. All right, great case. As I get more info, I'll probably do a follow-up. I know it went long, an hour and 15 minutes. There's a lot of information I tried to cover in here, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it, and we'll end that there.